There is a fruit at the center of the world of One Piece that no one has ever fully explained. It looks, at first, like something you might find in any market or hanging from any tree, a piece of fruit with a strange swirling pattern across its skin, a little larger than ordinary, a little stranger to the eye, and otherwise unremarkable. You could hold one in your hand and feel nothing extraordinary about it. And yet inside that ordinary looking thing sits a power that can reshape the fate of nations, a power that has decided the outcome of wars and the rise and fall of kings, a power that the most dangerous people in the world have killed and died and waited entire lifetimes to possess. They are called the devil fruits, and they are one of the oldest and deepest mysteries in the entire story, woven into its very first chapter, and still not fully understood after nearly 3 decades of telling. Tonight, we are going to follow the whole long history of these fruits, slowly, from the very beginning. We will look at what they are and what they cost, at the strange rules that govern them, and the stranger ways those rules are sometimes broken. We will trace the 3 great families of power they grant, and the rare and terrible exceptions that sit above those families. We will follow them back through history to the question no one can answer, the question of where they come from and why they exist at all. We will sit with the cruel and beautiful theory of what they truly are, and with the manufactured horrors that were made when people tried to copy them. And we will end with the single most important fruit in the entire world, the one the most powerful people alive spent 800 years trying to capture and never could. If these calm stories help you rest, you are welcome to subscribe before we begin. And as the night settles softly around you, we start at the simplest possible place, with the strange and ordinary looking thing itself, and the moment a person decides to take the first bite. To eat a devil fruit is to make a bargain that can never be undone. The fruit can be eaten only once in a person's life, because the power passes into the body with the very first bite, and from that moment on the bargain is sealed forever. There is no taking it back, no giving it away, no changing your mind. And the story has always been careful to tell us that the bite itself is unpleasant. Every account agrees that a devil fruit tastes terrible, so foul and bitter that those who have eaten one describe it as among the worst things they have ever put in their mouths, a taste so bad that some can barely force down a single bite. There is something almost fitting in that, in the idea that a power capable of reshaping the world should arrive wrapped in something that the body instinctively wants to reject, as though the fruit itself were giving you one last warning before the bargain becomes permanent. And then the power arrives. The moment the fruit is swallowed, the eater gains an ability that defies the ordinary rules of the world, a strength so far beyond the natural that it would have been called magic in an older age. The variety of these powers is almost endless. One person might gain the ability to stretch their body like rubber, another to turn their flesh into living flame, another to pass through solid walls as though they were mist, another to control the weather or split the very air or command an army of shadows. No 2 fruits grant the same ability, and the range of what is possible seems limited only by imagination itself, which is the first hint, quiet and early, of what these fruits might actually be. They are not a single kind of power. They are a vast and varied collection of dreams made real, each one different, each one the shape of some impossible wish that someone, somewhere, once held. But the bargain has two sides, and the second side is a curse. We will come to it next, because it is impossible to understand the devil fruits without understanding what they take from the people who eat them, and what they take is, in a world made almost entirely of ocean, very nearly everything. The price of every devil fruit is the same, no matter what power it grants, and it is a price perfectly designed to be cruel in the world where these fruits exist. The moment a person eats a devil fruit, the sea rejects them. They lose the ability to swim completely and permanently, so that a person who was a strong swimmer the day before will sink like a stone the day after. And it goes deeper than simply being unable to swim. When a devil fruit user is submerged in water, especially in the seawater of the ocean, their strength drains out of them. Their limbs grow heavy and useless. Their power, whatever it is, becomes inaccessible. They go limp and helpless, unable to move, unable to fight, unable even to save their own lives, as though the water were reaching into them and switching off the very thing the fruit had switched on. Consider how cruel this is in the world of One Piece. This is a world that is almost entirely ocean, a world where every island is separated from every other island by vast stretches of open water, where the entire story takes place aboard ships crossing endless seas, where falling overboard is a constant danger, and where the sea is never more than a step away. And it is precisely in this world, where water is everywhere and inescapable, that the greatest powers come bound to a helplessness in water so complete that a man who can turn his whole body into fire can be killed by a quiet pond, that a woman who can sprout limbs from any surface can drown in water shallow enough to stand in, that the strongest fighters in the world carry inside them a weakness that the ocean is always waiting to exploit. The fruit gives you a power that makes you more than human, and in the same instant it hands the sea a key to switching that power off, and the sea is everywhere, patient and vast and always close. There is a word the story uses for this, a blunt and almost comic word that captures the helplessness perfectly. A devil fruit user who falls into the water becomes, in the language of the world, a hammer, a thing that does nothing but sink. The greatest pirate, the most powerful warrior, the most feared admiral, reduced in an instant to a hammer the moment the sea closes over their head. It is a humbling at the very heart of the power system, a reminder built into the fruits themselves that no matter how far beyond human you climb, there is one thing you can never overcome, one element that will always have power over you, one vast and ancient presence that the fruit has set permanently against you. And the deeper you go into the history of the devil fruits, the more you begin to suspect that this is not an accident or an unfortunate side effect, but something essential, a clue about what the fruits really are and why the sea, of all things, should hate them so completely. Before we go further into the nature of these powers, you are welcome to subscribe for more gentle One Piece stories made for rest. And as you settle in tonight somewhere between the day that is ending and the sleep that is coming. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from. The thing we turn to now is the strange substance that proves the sea's hatred of the fruits is real. A mineral that carries the power of the ocean inside it and can be carried in a person's hand. It is called sea stone, and it is one of the most important and least understood materials in the entire world. Sea stone is a rare mineral, and what makes it extraordinary is that it emits the same energy as the sea itself. The story is very specific about this. The hostility that the ocean shows toward devil fruit users is not really about water as a physical substance. It is about something the sea contains, some quality or force or presence, and sea stone is that same force pressed into solid form. To touch sea stone for a devil fruit user is to feel the same draining helplessness that comes from being submerged in the ocean, except that now the ocean can be held in a hand, shaped into a tool wrapped around a wrist. The sea's power against the fruits has been made portable. This single fact reshapes the entire balance of power in the world. The most secure prison in the world is built with sea stone, its bars and its chains and its cells laced with the mineral, so that the most dangerous devil fruit users alive can be held there with their powers switched off, made into ordinary helpless prisoners by the constant presence of the sea around them. Handcuffs are made of sea stone so that a single pair of cuffs can reduce the most powerful pirate in the world to someone who can be led away like an ordinary criminal. The bottoms of certain ships are coated with sea stone, which lets them move through waters full of enormous sea monsters without drawing the creature's attention, because the monsters cannot sense a ship that carries the ocean's own energy on its hull. And weapons can be made or edged with sea stone, so that a single touch from the right blade can rob a devil fruit user of everything the fruit ever gave them. What makes sea stone a mystery in its own right is the question of where it comes from and what it truly is. If it carries the same energy as the sea, then the sea contains some force that opposes the fruits at a level deeper than water and salt, some essence that can be mined out of the earth in solid form. The story has never fully explained what that essence is. It has only shown us, again and again, that it exists, that it is real, that the opposition between the sea and the fruits is not a metaphor, but a physical law of the world, a force that can be quarried and forged and turned into chains. And so the curse of the devil fruits and the substance of sea stone point at the same buried question. Why does the sea, the oldest and largest presence in the entire world, hold a specific and unrelenting hatred for these particular powers? We will return to that question later tonight when we reach the theory of what the fruits actually are. For now, hold on to it gently, the way you hold on to a thought as you drift toward sleep, and let us turn to the three great families into which all of these powers fall. For all their endless variety, every devil fruit in the world belongs to one of three great types, and understanding these three types is the key to understanding everything else about how the fruits work. The three types are called Paramecia, Zoan, and Logia, and they are not simply categories of convenience. They represent three fundamentally different ways that a power can take hold of a person, three different relationships between the eater and the strange ability that now lives inside them. Each type has its own character, its own strengths, and its own limits, and across the long history of the fruits, the rarity and the danger of the three types form a kind of hidden hierarchy that shapes how the whole world understands power. The first and most common type is called paramecia, and it is also the most varied and the most unpredictable. Paramecia fruits grant their users a power that alters the world in some way without fitting neatly into either of the other two categories. A paramecia user might gain the ability to change their own body in some strange fashion, stretching it or hardening it or splitting it apart. They might gain the power to affect the things around them, to turn the ground to syrup, or to produce explosions, or to manipulate objects at a distance. They might gain an ability that has nothing to do with their body at all, but instead works on some abstract quality of the world, on weight, on touch, on memory, on the very passage of feeling between people. The paramecia type is the great catch-all of the devil fruits, the family that holds every power too strange or too specific to belong anywhere else, and because of that, it is the family with the widest range, from the almost trivial to the genuinely world-ending. What most readers come to understand, the longer they follow the story, is that the paramecia type contains both the weakest fruits in the world and some of the absolute strongest. There are paramecia powers that amount to little more than a parlor trick, abilities so minor that their users struggle to make them useful in a fight. And there are paramecia powers so immense that a single user can level a city, crack the air itself, or threaten to destroy the world. The type does not determine the scale of the power. It only determines its nature, the fact that the power alters the world in some way that is neither a simple animal transformation nor a transformation into a force of nature. The most varied family of fruits is also the family where the gap between the weakest and the strongest is the widest, and where the true potential of a power is often hidden until its user finds the one strange application that no one had imagined. The second type is called Zoan, and it is in some ways the most straightforward of the three, and in other ways the strangest. A Zoan fruit grants its user the ability to transform into an animal. The user can take the full form of the creature, becoming a wolf or a leopard or a great bird entirely, or they can take a hybrid form, a blend of human and animal that combines the intelligence and the hands of a person with the strength and the instincts and the weapons of the beast. This makes Zoan users, more than any other type, into pure fighters. The animal forms grant enhanced strength, speed, durability, and physical capability, turning the body itself into a weapon, and Zoan users tend to be among the most relentless and physically overwhelming combatants in the world. Fighters who close the distance and tear through their enemies with claws and fangs and raw animal power. Within the Zoan family, there are layers of rarity, and the deeper layers hold some of the most extraordinary powers in the world. The most common Zoan fruits transform the user into ordinary living animals. Rarer than those are the carnivorous Zoans, the meat-eating beasts, which the story describes as more bloodthirsty and more powerful in combat than their gentler counterparts, as though the predatory nature of the animal carries over into the fighting spirit of the user. Rarer still are the ancient zoans, fruits that transform the user not into a living animal, but into a creature from the distant past, an extinct beast, a great reptile from an age before recorded history, enormous and primal, and built for a world far more dangerous than the present one. And rarest of all, at the very top of the entire Zoan family, and among the rarest fruits of any kind in the world, are the mythical Zoans, the fruits that transform the user into a creature of legend, into a phoenix or a dragon or a god from the oldest stories of the world. We will return to the mythical Zoans later tonight because they sit close to the deepest secrets of the entire story. There is one more thing about the Zoan type that sets it apart from every other fruit, and it is genuinely strange. A Zoan power, alone among the three types, can be given to something that is not alive. If a Zoan fruit is fed to an object, to a sword or a weapon or a tool, the object absorbs the power and gains a will of its own. A blade fed an elephant zoan becomes a weapon that can transform into an elephant and act on its own. A gun fed a dog zoan becomes a firearm with the loyalty and the behavior of a dog. The object comes alive, in a sense, gaining a kind of awareness and personality that it never had before, which raises a quiet and unsettling question that the story has never fully answered. What is the will inside a Zoan fruit? Where does the awareness come from that can animate a dead object and give it loyalty and instinct and something close to a soul? This question, small and easy to overlook when it first appears, turns out to point at one of the deepest mysteries of what the devil fruits truly are, and we will follow it later into much stranger territory. The third type is called Logia, and it is the rarest of the three to occur in nature and the one most surrounded by an aura of dread. A Logia fruit allows its user to transform their entire body into a natural element or a force of nature and to produce and control that element at will. A Logia user might become living fire, able to turn any part of their body into flame and to hurl fire at their enemies. They might become smoke or lightning or ice or sand or magma or gas or light itself, their flesh dissolving into the element and reforming at will. And because their body becomes the element, most Logia users gain a second and far more dangerous ability. They become intangible. An attack aimed at a Logia user simply passes through them, through the smoke or the flame or the lightning, doing no harm, as though striking at the element itself, which cannot be cut or punched or pierced in any ordinary way. For a long time, the Logia type was considered something close to invincibility, and it is easy to see why. A fighter whose body cannot be touched, who can dissolve out of the path of any blow and reform to strike back with the fury of a natural element, seems to have no weakness at all. Many Logia users grow arrogant on exactly this belief, treating themselves as untouchable, certain that no ordinary fighter could ever land a blow. But the story has been careful across its long history to dismantle that illusion. There are ways to touch the untouchable. The mysterious power called haki, The force of will that the strongest fighters learn to wield can strike a Logia user directly, bypassing the intangibility and landing a real blow on the body hidden inside the element. Certain elements have natural counters: fire that can be overwhelmed by magma, ice that can be shattered, light that can be matched, and there is at least one Logia in all the world that does not grant intangibility at all, but instead grants something far darker, and we will come to that fruit and its terrible nature later tonight. The Logia type is not invincibility. It only looks like invincibility to those who have not yet met the thing that can break it, and in the world of One Piece, there is always something that can break it. These three types, then, are the great families of the devil fruits, the three doors through which every power in the world arrives. But the types are only the beginning of how a fruit's power can grow, because there is a further stage, a deeper level that most users never reach, a level where the power stops behaving the way it always has and becomes something far greater. The story calls it awakening, and for a long time it was one of the best kept secrets in the entire world. Awakening is the hidden potential that sleeps inside every devil fruit, and it represents a leap in power so large that most users live their entire lives without ever discovering it exists. To awaken a devil fruit is to push the power beyond the boundary of the user's own body and into the world itself, and what that looks like depends on the type of fruit. For a paramecia user, awakening means that the power they once used only on themselves can now be applied to the world around them. A user who could turn their own body into a particular substance can now turn the ground, the buildings, the very environment into that substance, reshaping the battlefield itself into an extension of their power. The world around an awakened paramecia user becomes theirs to command. The streets and the walls and the air transformed into tools of their ability, so that they are no longer simply a person with a power, but a person who can rewrite the rules of the space they stand in. The first time the story revealed awakening clearly, it did so in a way designed to inspire dread. A powerful enemy, already feared, suddenly demonstrated that the ground beneath the hero's feet was no longer ordinary ground, that the entire environment had become an extension of his will, that there was nowhere to stand that was not already part of his power. The revelation reframed everything readers thought they understood about the limits of the fruits. The power a user shows in their ordinary fights, it turned out, might be only the surface, only the first and smallest expression of an ability that, fully awakened, could swallow the world around it. And the question of how awakening is achieved, of what pushes a fruit across that threshold, became one of the great open questions of the story, a question we will return to as we go deeper, because the answer seems to involve not just training and not just time, but something about the relationship between a person and the power that lives inside them. For a zone fruit, awakening takes a different, and in some ways, more intimate shape. An awakened Zoan does not reach outward to transform the environment. Instead, the transformation turns inward and deepens, granting the user extraordinary physical recovery, a body that heals at a speed no ordinary person could match, stamina that seems to refuse to run out, a durability and a resilience that let an awakened Zoan user keep rising long after any normal fighter would have fallen. The animal nature of the fruit, pushed to its awakened limit, becomes a kind of relentless vitality, a body that simply will not stop, that regenerates and endures and presses forward through wounds that should have ended the fight long ago. But there is a shadow side to zone awakening, and it connects back to that strange question of the will inside the fruit. For some zone users, especially the artificial ones we will discuss later, the awakening of the fruit can mean that the animal's will grows stronger than the person's, that the beast begins to take over, that the user risks losing themselves to the power they carry. The fruit is not simply a tool the user wields. It has something inside it, something that wants to express itself, something that grows more present as the power awakens, and the line between the person and the animal can begin to blur. This is one of the quietest and most haunting aspects of the entire Zoan type, the suggestion that these fruits carry not just a power, but a presence, a will that can animate a dead object, or, in the wrong circumstances, begin to overwrite a living mind. And it deepens the mystery we have been carrying since the beginning, the mystery of what exactly lives inside a devil fruit and where it comes from. Now we come to one of the strangest rules of all, a rule that governs the entire history of the devil fruits and that turns them from objects into something closer to immortal travelers moving through time. It is the rule of reincarnation, the law that decides what happens to a power when the person who holds it dies. When a devil fruit user dies, the power does not die with them. This is one of the most important and most mysterious facts about the fruits, and it shapes the entire history of how powers move through the world. The moment a user dies, their ability is released and it reincarnates. The power reappears in the world, taking up residence in another piece of fruit somewhere, some ordinary fruit on some ordinary tree, that in the instant of the user's death becomes the next devil fruit of that exact type. The swirling pattern blooms across its skin, the power settles inside it, and it waits somewhere out in the world to be found and eaten by someone new, so that an ability that vanished from the world at the moment of a death returns to it at that very same moment, carried forward into the next generation. This means that there is only ever one of each devil fruit in the world at any given time. The same power cannot exist in two people at once. As long as a user lives, their fruit cannot reappear, and only when they die does the ability circulate onward to a new fruit and eventually a new user. The result is that the powers themselves are effectively immortal, even though the people who wield them are not. A particular ability might pass through a dozen different hands across the centuries, appearing in a pirate in one age, and a soldier in the next, and a child in the age after that. The same power surfacing again and again throughout history, never destroyed, only passed on. The users live and fight and die, and the powers go on, drifting through the long years from body to body, an unbroken chain of abilities that outlasts everyone who ever carries them. Sit with how strange that is, because it is one of the most beautiful and least examined ideas in the entire story. The world contains a fixed and finite set of these powers, a particular collection of impossible abilities, and that collection never grows smaller. Every power that has ever existed still exists somewhere, waiting in a piece of fruit for the next person to find it. The dreams do not die, they circulate, they wait, and somewhere in the world right now, in the logic of the story, there is a fruit holding a power that some great figure of the past once wielded, ripening quietly on a branch, waiting for a hand that has not yet reached for it. Where the power goes in the instant between one body and the next fruit, how it knows which fruit to enter, what carries it across the distance from a dying user to a ripening fruit on some far off island, the story has never explained. It is one of the oldest mysteries of the fruits, hidden inside the most basic fact of how they pass through history. There is one more rule, and it is the harshest of them all, a rule that the story treats as nearly absolute. A person can eat only one devil fruit, not because of the bargain or the curse, but because of something far more final. If a person who has already eaten one devil fruit eats a second, their body cannot contain the two powers at once, and it is destroyed. The body bursts, torn apart by the impossibility of holding two of these abilities in a single frame, and the person dies. This is presented as one of the iron laws of the world, a limit that no one can cross, a reason that even the most ambitious figures take only one fruit and guard the power they have rather than reaching for more. And yet the story has shown us exactly one person who broke this law and lived, a single figure, one of the most dangerous and mysterious in the entire world, somehow gained the power of a second devil fruit, taking the ability of a fallen rival and adding it to his own, wielding two of these world-shaking powers in one body when every law of the world says that doing so should have killed him instantly. How he did this, what is different about his body or his nature that let him survive what kills everyone else, the story has refused to explain. It is presented as a genuine mystery, a violation of one of the most fundamental rules of the world, a thing that should be impossible and yet visibly is not. Theories have swirled around it for years about the strange nature of his body, about secrets in his lineage, about possibilities the story has only hinted at, but the answer has been kept hidden, deliberately. One more locked door in the long hallway of devil fruit mysteries, a reminder that even the iron laws of the fruits have at least one exception walking the world, and that the rules we think we understand may have depths we have not yet been shown. We have talked now about what the devil fruits do and the rules that govern them, but we have not yet touched the oldest question of all, the one that sits underneath everything else. Where do they come from? After nearly 3 decades of story, after hundreds of fruits and thousands of pages, the most basic question about these powers remains one of the least answered, and the silence around it is so complete that it has to be deliberate. No one in the world knows how devil fruits are made, or whether they are made at all, or whether they simply grow. They appear in the world like gifts from nowhere, surfacing in markets and treasure hoards, in the holds of ships, passed from hand to hand, sold for fortunes, fought over and killed for, and yet no one can say where the first one came from, or how a new fruit comes into being when an old user dies. There are theories. Some believe the fruits grow on particular trees, hidden somewhere in the world, trees that bear this strange and impossible harvest. Some believe they are connected to the deep history of the world, to the lost century, to the ancient civilization whose knowledge the present age has forgotten. But these are guesses, scattered fragments of speculation, and the story has been content to let them stay guesses, keeping the true origin of the fruits hidden behind the same kind of silence that surrounds its other deepest secrets. The most important powers in the world come from a source that no one has ever found. But while the story has kept the physical origin of the fruits hidden, it has offered something deeper and stranger, a theory about what the fruits actually are. And this theory is one of the most beautiful ideas in the entire series. It came from the mind of the greatest scientist the world has ever known, a man who spent his life studying the deepest truths of how the world works, and who turned his enormous intellect toward the question of the devil fruits, the way he turned it toward everything else. And what he concluded was this: the devil fruits, he theorized, are the embodiment of the dreams of the people of the world. They are the physical shapes that human desire takes when it crystallizes into reality. Every fruit, in this theory, is a wish made flesh, the realized form of some power that a person, somewhere across the long history of the world, once longed to possess. Follow the idea and feel how much it explains. A person who wished they could fly, a person who wished they could become fire, or pass through walls, or stretch their arms across great distances to reach the thing they wanted, a person who wished they could turn back time, or heal any wound, or never be hungry again. According to this theory, the endless variety of the devil fruits is not random at all. It is the catalog of human longing, the complete collection of every power that people have ever dreamed of having, each wish given a physical form, each desire crystallized into a fruit that waits in the world for someone to make it real. This is why there are so many of them, and why they are so varied, and why their powers range from the world shaking to the strange and small. They are dreams, all of them, the dreams of a whole world across the whole of its history, gathered into fruit and scattered across the seas. And this theory, if it is true, finally explains the cruelest mystery of all, the question we have carried since the beginning of the night. Why does the sea hate the fruits? Why does the ocean, the oldest and largest presence in the world, hold such a specific and unrelenting hostility toward these particular powers, draining the strength of anyone who carries one, waiting always to swallow them? The answer the theory suggests is almost mythological in its beauty. If the fruits are the embodiment of human dreams, of the desire to become more than human, to transcend the natural limits of the body and the world, then the sea's hatred of them is the natural world pushing back against that transcendence. The ocean is nature itself, ancient and indifferent and vast, and the fruits are the audacity of any creature reaching for a power it was not born with, grasping at abilities that no natural thing should have. The sea rejects the fruits because the fruits are unnatural, because they represent a defiance of the order of the world, because they are dreams that have escaped the boundary between what is wished for and what is real. And so the moment a person eats one, the moment they take a dream into their body and make it real, the sea turns against them and never lets them go. To make this theory more than a beautiful idea, the great scientist had to understand the deepest mechanism of life itself, and in doing so, he uncovered something he called the blueprint of all living things. He discovered that every creature in the world, every plant and animal and person, is built according to a kind of design, a set of instructions written into the very substance of life, a code that determines what a thing is and how it grows and what it can become. He called this the lineage factor, the inherited blueprint that shapes every living being, and his discovery of it was one of the greatest scientific achievements in the history of the world. Once a person understood the lineage factor, they could begin to read the design of life, and once they could read it, the terrible next thought followed naturally. If you can read the blueprint of life, perhaps you can rewrite it. Perhaps you can change what a creature is. And perhaps, most dangerous of all, perhaps you can use it to copy the dreams that the devil fruits embody, to manufacture power, to build a fruit where nature would have grown one. That thought, the thought of manufacturing the dreams of humanity, of copying the embodiment of human desire in a laboratory, led to some of the darkest events in the entire history of the devil fruits. Because when people tried to make their own fruits, they did not create dreams. They created something else, something twisted and incomplete and cruel. And the story of the artificial devil fruits is one of the most disturbing chapters in the whole long history we are tracing tonight. The dream of manufacturing devil fruits is an old one, and the first real success came from the work of the greatest scientist in the world, who managed, after enormous effort, to create an artificial fruit, a manufactured power, grown rather than found. But his creations were flawed, incomplete copies of the real thing, and they came with strange defects that the natural fruits did not have. An artificial fruit might grant a power that worked imperfectly, a transformation that came out wrong, a body that could not quite hold the shape it was meant to take. The science was real, and the achievement was genuine, but it proved a hard truth from the very beginning. A manufactured dream is not the same as a real one. Something is always missing, some essential quality that nature provides and the laboratory cannot. And the gap between the real fruit and the copy is where all the horror of the artificial fruits would eventually grow. The most infamous of these manufactured powers came from a partnership between a twisted scientist and an ambitious schemer, and they called their creation the artificial zoan, sold under a name that was meant to sound cheerful and turned out to be the cruelest joke in the entire story. To make these fruits, the scientist took the blueprint of life, the lineage factor of animals, and combined it with a special chemical of his own design, growing the result into fruit that could be sold and eaten like the real thing. The fruits were distributed to an ambitious warlord who wanted an army, a force of artificial beastmen to fill out his ranks, soldiers who could transform into animals on command and fight with the strength of beasts. And for a time, it seemed to work. People ate the manufactured fruits and gained animal powers, and an army of artificial zoan users began to take shape, a manufactured horde built on copied dreams. But the manufactured fruits carried a terrible failure rate. The great majority of the people who ate them gained no power at all, and worse than no power, because a failed fruit did not simply do nothing. It broke the body of the person who ate it, leaving them unable to move properly, robbing them of the ordinary use of their limbs, turning them into something diminished and damaged for the rest of their lives. For every person who gained an animal power from these fruits, many more were ruined by them, their bodies wrecked by a dream that did not take, discarded as failures by the people who had fed them the fruit in the first place. The manufactured power was built on a foundation of broken bodies, on the suffering of all the people for whom the copy simply did not work, and the army that resulted was a monument to cruelty as much as to ambition. And the ones for whom it did work carried a defect that was, in its own way, more horrifying than any broken body. The people who successfully gained power from these artificial fruits lost something in exchange, something the natural fruits never took. They lost the ability to feel and express sadness. They could no longer cry. No matter what happened to them, no matter what pain they suffered or what grief they carried, their faces could only smile and their voices could only laugh. A person made this way could be wounded, could watch their friends die, could endure the worst suffering imaginable, and through all of it, they would be smiling, laughing, their bodies locked into a permanent, unnatural cheerfulness that had been engineered into them along with their power. An entire army of soldiers who could only laugh, even as they bled, even as they fell, even as they died. It is one of the most disturbing images in the whole of One Piece, a battlefield full of beastmen laughing through their own destruction, robbed by a manufactured fruit of the most basic human right to grieve. If you are still awake somewhere in the middle of all this, drifting but not yet gone, maybe subscribe before you drift off, and tell me what time it is where you are watching from tonight. The horror of the manufactured fruits points at something the natural fruits never reveal so clearly, a truth about what is really inside these powers and what it costs to copy them, and it is to that deeper truth that we turn now. Why did the manufactured fruits steal away sadness of all things? Why was that the price of a copied dream? The story has never spelled out the mechanism, but the implication runs straight back to the theory we explored earlier. The theory that the fruits are the embodiment of human dreams. A real devil fruit, grown by whatever mysterious process nature uses, carries a whole and complete dream inside it. A full crystallized wish with all of its depth and all of its humanity intact. A manufactured fruit carries only a copy, an incomplete imitation assembled in a laboratory from the blueprint of life and a synthetic chemical, and something essential is missing from that copy, some piece of the wholeness that nature provides. The missing piece, it seems, is the capacity for sorrow, the part of the dream that holds grief alongside joy, and without it, the manufactured power can only express half of what a person is: the laughter without the tears, the smile without the sadness underneath it. The artificial fruits prove, in the most painful way possible, that a dream cannot be fully copied. that there is something in the real fruits that no science can reproduce, some wholeness, some humanity, some completeness that can only be grown and never built. This is the deepest lesson of the artificial devil fruits, and it casts its light back across everything we have discussed tonight. The natural fruits are whole. They carry complete dreams, full and human and intact, and they grant their powers without stealing away any part of what makes a person a person. The manufactured fruits are fragments, copies missing the very thing that made the original worth having, and the suffering they cause is the suffering of incompleteness, of a dream that was never finished, of a power bought at the cost of half a soul. And underneath it all sits the same mystery we have been circling since the first bite. The mystery of what these powers truly are and where the wholeness of a real fruit comes from. Because if a real fruit carries a complete dream with all its joy and all its sorrow, then a real fruit carries something very close to a piece of a person, and the question of where that piece comes from, of whose dreams these are, and how they came to be sealed in fruit, takes us toward the strangest and most important chapter in the entire history of the devil fruits. To reach that chapter, we have to climb to the very top of the devil fruit world, to the rarest and most extraordinary fruits of all, the ones that sit above every other power and brush up against the divine. They are the mythical zoans, and they are so rare that for long stretches of the story, their very existence is treated as something close to legend. We touched on the mythical zoans earlier when we walked through the layers of the Zoan family, but they deserve a deeper look because they are unlike anything else in the world. A mythical Zoan does not transform its user into an animal, ancient or otherwise. It transforms them into a creature of myth, a being from the oldest legends and the deepest faiths of the world. A phoenix or a dragon or a god, and because the creatures they embody are not natural animals but legendary beings, the mythical Zoans often carry powers that no other fruit possesses, abilities that bend the ordinary rules even further than the other types do. A user who becomes a phoenix might command flames that heal rather than burn, blue fire that knits wounds closed and restores the body, a regenerative power that makes them nearly impossible to kill. A user who becomes a great dragon might command the weather itself, summoning storms and fire and force on a scale that dwarfs ordinary fighters. The mythical Zoans are the rarest fruits in the world, rarer even than the natural Logia, and each one is a kind of legend walking the earth, a piece of ancient myth made real in a single person. What makes the mythical Zoans so important to the deeper history of the devil fruits is exactly this connection to myth and legend. If a fruit can transform a person into a god from the old stories, then the old stories and the fruits are connected. Then the legends the world tells are not merely tales, but somehow tied to these powers. Then, the gods and heroes of forgotten faiths have a strange kind of reality sealed inside fruit, and the story has slowly revealed that the most powerful and secretive figures in the world carry mythical Zoans, that the hidden rulers at the top of the world transform into ancient and monstrous legendary beings, that the rarest tier of devil fruit is concentrated in the hands of those closest to the world's deepest secrets. The mythical zoans are not just powerful, they are a thread that ties the devil fruits to the buried history of the world, to the ancient legends, to the faiths and the gods that the world has half forgotten. And following that thread leads us to the single most important fruit in the entire story. There is a fruit that the most powerful people in the world spent 800 years trying to capture and never could. It is a mythical zoan, the rarest of the rare, and for the entire length of the story up until quite recently, almost no one knew it was anything more than the most ordinary seeming power imaginable. Its true history is one of the great revelations of One Piece, a secret that was hidden in plain sight from the very first chapter. Sitting on the head and in the body of the main character the whole time, disguised as something simple and almost silly. To understand it, we have to go back to the beginning, to the very first power the reader ever encounters, and then learn that everything we were told about it was a lie. The main character of One Piece eats a devil fruit in the earliest pages of the story by accident. As a child, and the power he gains seems almost comically modest. His body becomes rubber. He can stretch, bounce, and absorb impacts, and for a long time, this seems like one of the more light-hearted and limited powers in the world. A fruit suited to a cheerful and simple-minded hero. Nothing that would frighten anyone. The fruit was known by a simple name, a name that described exactly what it did. The rubber fruit. And for hundreds of chapters that was all it was, a stretchy power belonging to a stretchy hero, the foundation of 1,000 creative fights, but never something that seemed to carry any deeper weight. And then the story revealed the truth, and the truth rearranged everything. The fruit was never the rubber fruit at all. That name was a disguise, a label placed on it by the world government 800 years ago to hide what it really was. The fruit's true name is the human fruit, model Nika, and it is a mythical zoan, one of the rarest fruits in the entire world. It transforms its user into the legendary figure of Nika, the sun god, a warrior of liberation from the oldest legends of the world. Nika was a figure of hope, a god spoken of in whispers by slaves and oppressed people across centuries, a savior who was said to dance and laugh as he fought, who brought freedom and joy wherever he appeared, who made people smile in the middle of their suffering and gave them the hope that one day they too might be free. The legend of Nika was so beloved by the downtrodden, so powerful as a symbol of liberation, that the rulers of the world came to fear it, and they feared the fruit that carried his power most of all. So the rulers of the world did two things. First, they erased the name. They took the fruit's true name, the human fruit model Nika, and they buried it, replacing it with the plain and harmless rubber fruit, so that anyone who encountered the power would see only a silly stretching ability and never suspect that they were looking at the embodiment of a god of liberation that the world had spent centuries trying to forget. And second, they ordered the fruit captured. For 800 years, the world government tried to find this fruit and lock it away, to take it out of circulation, to make sure that the power of the sun god never fell into the hands of anyone who might use it the way the legend promised. They wanted it gone, contained, controlled, kept forever out of the reach of the oppressed people who still whispered the old stories of Nika and the freedom he would one day bring. And here is the strangest and most wonderful part of the whole history. They never caught it. For 800 years, across the entire span of recorded history, the most powerful organization in the world. The rulers who command armies and erase centuries and drown kingdoms tried to capture a single piece of fruit, and the fruit eluded them every single time. It kept slipping away. It refused to be found. Generation after generation, the order to retrieve it went out, and generation after generation, the fruit was not there, having moved on, having reincarnated somewhere else, having vanished into the vast world before the hands of the government could close around it. The story tells this with a kind of quiet wonder, as though the fruit itself were alive, as though the power inside it had a will of its own, as though the embodiment of the God of liberation simply refused to be imprisoned, dancing away from its captors for 8 centuries until at last, by what looked like the purest accident, it found its way to a cheerful boy in a small village who ate it without any idea of what it was. This is where all the threads we have been following tonight come together. The mystery of the will inside the fruits, the strange awareness that can animate an object or refuse to be captured, the theory that the fruits are dreams made flesh, the crystallized form of human longing, the connection between the mythical Zoans and the ancient legends of the world. All of it converges on this single fruit, the embodiment of a God of freedom that carried a will of its own, that eluded the most powerful captors in the world for 800 years, that seemed to be waiting, across all that time, for the right person to find it. And when that person finally awakened its power, the fruit revealed what it had been holding all along. The awakened form of the sun god's fruit is the embodiment of freedom itself, a power that turns the world rubbery and cartoonish and absurd, that lets its user do the impossible and the ridiculous, that fights with laughter and joy and the pure refusal of any limit or any cage. It is, fittingly, one of the most ridiculous powers in the entire world, and that ridiculousness is the point, because freedom that takes itself too seriously is not really freedom at all. The God of liberation fights by laughing, and the fruit that carries him spent 800 years laughing its way out of the hands of everyone who tried to lock it away. The history of this single fruit is, in miniature, the history of everything the devil fruits are: a dream made flesh, a power with a will of its own, a piece of ancient legend sealed in fruit and carried forward across the centuries, passing from body to body, eluding those who would control it, waiting for the person who could finally set it free. And the fact that the world government feared one piece of fruit enough to erase its name and hunt it for 800 years tells you everything about how much power these dreams can hold, and how much the rulers of the world understand that a dream, once it finds the right person to carry it, is the most dangerous thing in all the seas. From the most meaningful fruit in the world, we turn now to the most powerful, and to the small handful of fruits whose abilities are so immense that they sit in a category of their own, fruits spoken of as the strongest of their kind, fruits capable of threatening the entire world. The first of these is a paramecia, and it is described more than once as perhaps the single strongest devil fruit power in existence. It grants its user the ability to generate vibrations, tremors, quakes, the power to crack the very air and shatter the ground and send waves of destructive force rippling out through anything around them. In the hands of its greatest wielder, one of the strongest men who ever lived. This power was said to be capable of destroying the entire world, of cracking the planet itself, of unleashing tremors on a scale that no army or fortress could withstand. When that man used his power, the sky itself seemed to crack, the air splintering like glass, the ground heaving and tearing. There was no defense against it, no armor that could turn it aside, because it did not strike at a body, but at the world itself, shaking everything to pieces. It is the clearest proof in the entire story that a paramecia, the most common and varied of the three types, can also be the most apocalyptic, that the catch all family of fruits holds at its peak a power that could end everything. The second of these great fruits is a logia, but it is a logia unlike any other, and it breaks the rules that govern its own type. We said earlier that most logia fruits grant intangibility, the ability to let attacks pass harmlessly through an elemental body. This one does not. It grants the user power over darkness, the ability to become a kind of living void, an endless hungry blackness that pulls everything toward it and swallows it whole, and instead of intangibility, it grants the opposite, a body that absorbs damage, that takes in every blow rather than letting it pass through. Its user feels pain that other logia never feel, suffers wounds that other logia avoid, and yet the fruit grants in exchange a power so terrible that it more than compensates. The darkness can swallow anything, even the powers of other devil fruits. With a single touch, the user of this fruit can nullify another fruit's ability, dragging the power into the void and switching it off, robbing the most dangerous devil fruit users in the world of everything their fruits ever gave them. It is called the most evil of all the devil fruit powers, and the man who wields it waited his entire life specifically for it, hunting it across the seas, because he understood that a power that can swallow other powers is the key to standing above everyone else in a world ruled by these fruits. The third of these great fruits is a paramecia, and what makes it extraordinary is not destructive power at all, but something far rarer in this world, the power to defeat death itself. It grants its user the ability to create a kind of sphere around themselves, a field within which they can manipulate anything, rearranging objects and people, and even the parts of a living body with perfect freedom and precision, cutting without wounding, swapping one thing for another, reshaping whatever lies within their reach. This alone makes it one of the most versatile powers in the world. But hidden inside it is a single ultimate technique, an operation that the fruit can perform just once, and that technique can grant another person eternal youth, a body that will never age and never die. It is the closest thing to true immortality that exists anywhere in the story, and it is why this fruit is called the ultimate devil fruit. sought across generations by people who would give anything to live forever. And yet, like so much else in the history of the fruits, the miracle comes with a terrible price. The user who performs the immortality operation dies in the act of performing it. To grant another person eternal life, the wielder must give up their own, spending their entire existence in a single gift, so that the power to conquer death can only ever be used selflessly, only ever given away, never kept. You cannot make yourself immortal with it. You can only make someone else immortal, and only by laying down your own life to do it. It is the most generous and the most terrible power in the world held in a single fruit, a gift that can defeat death only by accepting it, an immortality that must be purchased with a sacrifice. And it sits there in the catalogue of the fruits, quiet and strange, one more dream made flesh, the dream of living forever, granted in the cruelest and most beautiful way imaginable. These great fruits sit at the top of the world, but they are only a few among the hundreds that move through the seas, and the deeper history of the devil fruits is really the history of all those powers passing from hand to hand across the generations. Because of the rule of reincarnation, every famous fruit has a history, a lineage of users stretching back through time. The same power surfacing again and again in different ages and different hands. A fruit of living flame might appear in one great fighter, and when that fighter dies, the same power reincarnates and is found again, perhaps won in a tournament, perhaps discovered by chance, passing to a new user who carries the same fire the old one carried. The story has shown us this directly. A beloved firepower lost when its user died, and then returning to the world, found again, taken up by someone connected to the one who lost it. The flame passing forward across a death, like an inheritance carried by the fruit itself. Through this endless circulation, certain powers have become legendary in their own right. Famous not for any single user, but for the long line of them. There are the elemental logia of the great naval commanders, powers of ice and light, and lightning and magma, each one a force of nature wielded by some of the most powerful figures in the world's military, each one a fruit that has surely passed through other hands in ages past, and will pass through more in ages to come. There are the strange and specific paramecia, the power to control strings, the power to bloom limbs from any surface, the power to manipulate souls and lifespans, and the very years a person has left to live. Each of these is a dream that has been dreamed before, a wish that crystallized into fruit long ago and has been circulating through the world ever since, appearing in a villain in one age and a hero in the next, the same power wearing 100 different faces across the centuries. The history of the devil fruits is not really the history of any single fruit. It is the history of a fixed set of dreams moving endlessly through time, never created and never destroyed, only passed on again and again from each user to the next. And through all of that long history, every single one of those users, no matter how powerful, has lived under the same shadow, the same curse we spoke of at the very beginning of the night. The sea. To carry a devil fruit power is to live, always, with the knowledge that the ocean is your enemy. that the vast water surrounding every island and every ship is waiting to take everything the fruit gave you the moment you fall into it. And so, the daily life of a devil fruit user across the whole history of the fruits is shaped by a constant and quiet vigilance, an awareness of water that never fully goes away. The most powerful pirates and warriors in the world arrange their entire lives around this single weakness. They learn never to fight near deep water if they can avoid it. They rely on their crews to catch them, to carry them, to pull them from the sea before the water can take hold. They stay on the deck rather than near the rail, keep solid ground beneath them whenever they can, and treat every stretch of open water as a danger that no amount of power can fully erase. Some find clever workarounds, using their own abilities or the abilities of others to move themselves across water that would otherwise be deadly, to be lifted or carried or shifted past the reach of the sea. But none of them ever truly escape it. The curse is permanent, woven into the fruit at the moment of the first bite, and it follows them for the rest of their lives, a quiet reminder underneath all their power that they made a bargain long ago, and that the second half of that bargain is always waiting just over the side of the ship in the oldest and largest presence in the entire world. Because the devil fruits are so rare and so powerful, the world has built around them an entire economy of knowledge and desire, and this too is part of their long history. A single fruit, the right fruit, can be worth a fortune beyond imagining. The most powerful fruits command prices high enough to buy fleets, to fund wars, to change the fate of a person or a nation overnight. And so the fruits have always moved through the world along two roads at once, the open road of legend and the hidden road of the black market. In the shadows of the world, fruits are bought and sold and stolen and smuggled, traded by brokers who deal in the underworld, fought over by people willing to kill for the chance to eat one, hunted by collectors and rulers and ambitious nobodies who understand that a single bite could lift them out of obscurity and into power. To navigate this trade, the world relies on a peculiar and precious kind of book, an encyclopedia of the devil fruits, a reference that gathers together illustrations and descriptions of the known fruits, so that a person who finds one can identify what they have discovered. These books are themselves rare and valuable because the knowledge they contain is power. The ability to look at an ordinary seeming swirled fruit and know whether you are holding a trivial curiosity or a world-shaking weapon. A person who finds a fruit without such knowledge is gambling blindly, eating an unknown power, and hoping it is worth the curse that comes with it. A person who can identify a fruit before they eat it, or before they sell it, holds an enormous advantage in a world where the difference between one fruit and another might be the difference between a parlor trick and the power to crack the sky. And yet, even the encyclopedias are incomplete, because new fruits are always reincarnating, because the rarest powers are too secret to have ever been cataloged, because the full extent of what the fruits can do is a knowledge that no single book has ever contained. The encyclopedia is a map of a territory that keeps shifting, a guide to a world of powers that is always larger than anyone has managed to write down. Across the long history of the world, the devil fruits have shaped the rise and fall of every great power. And the deeper you look, the more you see how completely the balance of the world has been built on these fruits. The most feared pirates, the rulers of the seas, the commanders of the world's military, the kings and the warlords and the emperors, so many of them owe their position to the power of a fruit, to a dream made flesh that lifted them above the ordinary limits of human strength. Wars have turned on the presence or absence of a single fruit user. The great battles of the story have been decided by who could bring the most overwhelming powers to the field. The map of the world's power is, in many places, a map of who holds which fruits, and the history of the world's conflicts is, in part, the history of these dreams clashing against one another across the seas. And yet, and this is one of the most important truths in the entire story, the fruits are not everything. Some of the very strongest figures in the world, fighters spoken of with as much fear and reverence as any fruit user, possess no devil fruit at all. They reach the heights of the world through pure skill, through training and willpower and the mastery of the body, through the mysterious force of haki that we will speak of in a moment, and they stand among the strongest beings alive without ever having taken a single bite of a fruit. This fact sits quietly at the center of the whole power system like a deliberate counterweight, a reminder that the fruits, for all their importance, are not the only road to strength, that a person can climb to the very top of the world on their own power alone, and that a dream made flesh is not the only kind of dream worth chasing. The history of the devil fruits is also, in a strange way, the history of the people who chose not to rely on them and proved that the heights they grant can be reached without them. The longer the story goes, the stranger the fruits become, because alongside the clean categories of paramecia and zoan and logia, there are always the special cases, the fruits that bend their own rules and blur the lines between the types. There is a fruit that brought a man back from the dead, that let a soul return to its body after life had already left it. A power so strange that it touches on the boundary between the living and the dead, granting not a fighting ability, but a second chance at existence itself. There are paramecia powers that mimic the qualities of a logia so closely that their users seem nearly intangible, able to let attacks sink harmlessly into a soft and shifting body, blurring the line between the most common type and the rarest. There are mythical zoans whose regenerative power makes them behave almost like a logia, nearly impossible to kill, occupying a strange middle ground that no simple category can contain. The neat division of the fruits into three families, it turns out, is only the first and roughest map of a territory full of exceptions and strange borderlands, full of powers that refuse to sit quietly inside the lines drawn for them. These special cases are not mistakes or inconsistencies. They are the story reminding us, again and again, that the devil fruits are wilder and deeper than any system can fully capture, that the dreams sealed inside them are too varied and too strange to be perfectly organized, that there will always be a fruit that does something no one expected, that breaks a rule everyone thought was absolute, that opens a door no one knew was there. The three types are the grammar of the fruits, the underlying structure that most powers follow, but the special cases are the poetry, the moments where a power does something genuinely new, where the imagination behind the fruits spills past the edges of the categories and reminds us that we are dealing not with a tidy system, but with the entire vast unruly catalog of human longing, which was never going to fit neatly into three boxes, no matter how carefully anyone tried to draw them. We have mentioned more than once tonight a mysterious force called hockey, and it deserves its own place in the history of the devil fruits, because it is the thing that keeps the fruits from being the final word on power, the counterweight that the story uses to keep its world from becoming a simple contest of who ate the strongest fruit. Hockey is the power of will made manifest, a force that every living being possesses in some small measure, but that only the strongest learn to truly wield. It is not granted by any fruit. It is drawn out of a person's own spirit, trained and hardened over years. And it gives those who master it abilities that have nothing to do with the fruits at all, the power to sense the presence and intent of others, the power to harden the invisible force of their will into a kind of armor and a kind of weapon, and in the rarest cases, the power to overwhelm the wills of others through sheer force of presence. The most important thing hockey does in the history of the fruits is that it provides the answer to the apparent invincibility of the Lokia. We spoke earlier of how a Lokia user seems untouchable, their elemental body letting every attack pass harmlessly through. Hockey breaks that illusion completely. A fighter who has hardened their will can strike a Lokia user directly, reaching past the smoke or the flame or the lightning to land a real blow on the body hidden inside, and this single fact reshaped the entire understanding of power in the world. The Logia were never truly invincible. They only looked invincible to those who had not yet developed the will to touch them. And once hockey entered the picture, it became clear that a devil fruit alone, no matter how powerful, does not make a master. A fruit grants a power, but it is the will behind the power, the skill and the spirit, and the years of training that decides whether that power means anything at all. The strongest figures in the world are not simply the ones with the best fruits. They are the ones who combine a great power with a great will, or who have honed their will so completely that they need no fruit at all. This is the quiet wisdom underneath the whole system of the fruits, and it is one of the reasons the story has remained so compelling across so many years. The fruits are dreams made flesh, gifts of impossible power, and yet a gift is only ever as good as the person who receives it. A weak person with a strong fruit is still weak. A strong person with a weak fruit can be terrifying, and a person of overwhelming will can stand among the strongest in the world with no fruit at all, having reached those heights through nothing but their own spirit. The devil fruits offer a shortcut, a way to leap past the ordinary limits of the body in a single bite. But they do not offer mastery, and they do not offer greatness, and the long history of the fruits is full of people who held tremendous power and amounted to nothing, and people who held little power and shook the world. The dream is only the beginning. What a person does with it is everything for those who do dedicate themselves fully to their fruit, who train it and live with it and push it for years. There waits that further frontier we spoke of earlier, the threshold of awakening, and it is worth returning to now because awakening represents the true ceiling of what a fruit can become. Awakening is rare. Across the entire world, across the whole history of the fruits, only a small number of users have ever reached it, because it requires not just power, but a depth of mastery and a closeness with the fruit that most users never achieve. To awaken a fruit is to understand it so completely, to have lived with it so long and pushed it so far that the boundary between the user and the power begins to dissolve, and the ability spills out beyond the body to reshape the world itself. What the recent history of the story has revealed is that awakening may be more common at the very top of the world than anyone suspected, that the strongest fighters alive have quietly been crossing this threshold, that the true peak of devil fruit power has only begun to be shown. And it suggests something profound about the relationship between a person and their fruit. Awakening does not seem to come from training alone, from simply using a power over and over. It seems to come from a deeper kind of communion, from a user coming to know their fruit so intimately that the two become almost a single thing. The dream and the dreamer fuse together. The fruit, remember, may carry a will of its own, a presence, a fragment of something alive. And awakening may be the moment when the user and that presence finally meet, when the person stops simply wielding the power and begins, in some sense, to merge with it, to become the dream rather than merely carrying it. The most awakened user we have seen fights with a joy and a freedom that seem to come from the fruit itself, as though the user and the ancient will inside the power had become one being, laughing together at the limits of the world. This brings us back, one more time, to the strangest thread in the entire history of the fruits, the question of the will inside them. We have seen it appear again and again tonight. A zoan fruit fed to an object brings the object to life, granting it awareness and loyalty and something close to a soul. A particular fruit eluded the most powerful captors in the world for 800 years, slipping away again and again as though it had a will to remain free. An awakened fruit seems to merge with its user, the dream and the dreamer becoming one. Each of these is a hint, and together they point at a possibility that the story has never quite stated outright, but is laid out clearly enough for anyone paying attention to see. The devil fruits may not be simple objects at all. They may be, in some sense, alive. Think of what the theory of the fruits already tells us. They are dreams made flesh, the crystallized form of human longing, complete and whole in a way no laboratory can copy. A dream is not a dead thing. A dream carries a piece of the person who dreamed it, a fragment of will and feeling and desire. And if a fruit carries a whole dream, then a fruit may carry a whole fragment of consciousness, a piece of will sealed inside it, dormant most of the time, waking when the fruit is eaten, expressing itself through the user, growing stronger as the power awakens, animating a dead object when there is no living user to channel it. The will inside the fruit would explain the loyalty of an animated weapon, the resistance of a fruit that refuses to be caught, the strange communion of awakening. It would mean that to eat a devil fruit is not simply to gain a power, but to take a sleeping will into your body, to carry someone else's crystallized dream, to become the vessel for a fragment of longing that has been waiting, perhaps for centuries, for the right person to bring it back to life. The fruits in this light are not weapons or tools at all. They are dreams that are still, in some quiet and patient way, dreaming. If the fruits carry fragments of dreams, then to follow their history is also to follow a long chain of human longing and human grief. And this is the part of the story that gives the devil fruits their quiet emotional weight. Because the powers pass from person to person across deaths, a fruit can become a kind of inheritance, a way that the will of one person is carried forward by another. There is a moment in the story, one of its most moving, where a power of living flame is lost when its bearer dies, and then returns to the world and is taken up at last by someone bound to the one who lost it, so that the fire that one brother carried passes across a death and a grief into the hands of another brother who picks it up and carries it on. The fruit becomes more than a power in that moment. It becomes a way of keeping a promise, of carrying a piece of someone who is gone, of letting a will that should have ended at a death continue instead into a new life. This is the tender secret hidden inside the rule of reincarnation. Because the powers do not die, because they circulate endlessly through the world, passing from one bearer to the next, every fruit is a thread connecting the people who have held it across time, a line of inheritance running through the generations. The dream that one person carried becomes the dream that another person carries, and though they may never have met, though centuries may separate them, they are joined by the single power they shared, the same crystallized longing passing through both their lives, and sometimes that inheritance is a gift, a fire taken up in memory of someone loved, and sometimes it is a burden, a power that brings loneliness or isolation or grief, a dream that came at a cost the bearer never asked to pay. The man who carried the power to return from death spent 50 years alone because of it, alive when everyone he loved had died, kept by his fruit on the far side of a loss so total that the power felt less like a gift than a sentence. The fruits give, and the fruits take, and the long history of the fruits is full of both, full of people lifted up by their powers and people weighed down by them, full of dreams that brought joy and dreams that brought sorrow, all of them passing on endlessly from one human heart to the next. To carry a devil fruit, then, is to carry something deeply human, even when the power itself is strange or monstrous or absurd. It is to carry a dream that someone, somewhere, once held, a wish that crystallized into fruit and waited through the years to be made real again. And the people of the story who understand this, who treat their powers not as tools, but as inheritances, as pieces of a larger human story, are often the ones who wield them most meaningfully. The fruit is not just an ability, it is a connection, a thread reaching back through history to everyone who ever held the same power and forward to everyone who ever will. A single dream shared across all the lives it passes through. And in a story so concerned with the will that people pass to one another, with the dreams that outlast the dreamers, with the way that what we care about can be carried on by those who come after us. The devil fruits are perhaps the purest expression of that idea, dreams that literally cannot die, longings that pass from heart to heart across the centuries, refusing, like the people who carry them, to ever truly disappear. Step back far enough, and the history of the devil fruits becomes a history of the whole world, stretching back across more time than anyone can clearly see. The fruits have been shaping the world for as long as there has been a world to shape. In the age of the great pirate king who conquered the seas, the fruits were already old, already passing from hand to hand, already deciding the outcomes of battles and the fates of nations. In the ages before that, in the long stretch of history that the story has only begun to reveal, the fruits were there too, surfacing in legendary figures, granting powers to the heroes and monsters of older times, circulating through generations that are now barely remembered. The same powers we see in the present have appeared and reappeared across all of that time, the same dreams worn by 1,000 different faces, the same abilities surfacing again and again throughout the long unwritten history of the world. This deep continuity is part of what gives the devil fruits their sense of weight and mystery. When a character in the present eats a fruit, they are not receiving something new. They are receiving something ancient, a power that has been moving through the world since before recorded history, a dream that has passed through countless lives across countless years before arriving, at last, in their hands. The fruit they hold has a past they will never fully know, a lineage of bearers stretching back into the dark, and a future that will continue long after they are gone, when the power reincarnates once more and passes to someone not yet born. To eat a devil fruit is to step into a river that has been flowing for longer than anyone can remember, to take up a power that is older than the kingdoms and the governments and the maps to become, for a single lifetime, the bearer of something that will outlast you by centuries. The history of the fruits is not a history that began at any point we can name. It reaches back as far as the story itself reaches, into the lost century and beyond, into the oldest ages of the world, where the dreams were already old, and already passing, and already shaping everything that would come after. And it is precisely there, in those oldest ages, that the deepest secrets of the devil fruits seem to lie, because the more the story reveals about the lost history of the world, the more the fruits appear to be tangled up in it. The single most important fruit in the world, the one carrying the power of the sun god, reaches directly back into the lost century, into the forbidden 100 years that the world has spent 800 years erasing. The legend of Nika is ancient, older than the world government itself, a story that was already old when the world's rulers came to power. The downtrodden and the enslaved were praying to Nika, dreaming of the liberator who would one day come to set them free, long before the present age and the deep past that the world has tried to bury. And the fruit that carries his power has been hunted by the world government for 8 centuries, which means the government knew about that fruit, feared that fruit, and began trying to capture that fruit at the very dawn of its own existence, in the immediate aftermath of the war that ended the lost century. The devil fruits, or at least the most important of them, are tangled up in the deepest and most forbidden history of the world. This connection runs deeper the closer you look. There is a figure from the lost century, a man the story calls Joy Boy, who lived during those forbidden 100 years, and who left behind promises and apologies carved in ancient stone, a figure of enormous importance whom the world fears and the oppressed remember. And the story has woven a quiet but unmistakable thread between that ancient figure and the power of the sun god, between Joy Boy and Nika, suggesting that the liberator of legend and the man of the lost century are bound together, that the fruit carrying the sun god's power may have been carried, once before, 800 years ago, by the very figure whose return the world has feared ever since. If that is true, then the devil fruits are not merely tangled up in the lost history of the world. They are at its center. The thing the world is most afraid of, the truth it erased a century to bury, may be connected to a fruit, to a dream made flesh, to a power that has been circulating through the world ever since, eluding capture, waiting to return. And this raises the deepest historical question of all, one the story has only begun to approach. Did the ancient world understand the devil fruits better than the present world does? The civilization that was destroyed at the end of the lost century possessed knowledge and technology that the modern world has forgotten, built things the present age cannot build, understood truths that have since been lost. Did they understand where the fruits came from? Did they know what the fruits truly are? The secret of the dreams sealed inside them, the source of the will that lives in them, the reason the sea hates them. The greatest scientist of the present age spent his whole life reconstructing knowledge that the ancients seem to have simply possessed, and his theory that the fruits are the embodiment of human dreams may be a rediscovery of something the lost civilization knew long ago. The history of the devil fruits, in other words, may be incomplete not because the truth was never known, but because it was known once in the forbidden century and then erased along with everything else, buried so deep that the modern world has had to slowly and painfully rediscover fragments of a knowledge that an older world held whole. The deepest secrets of the fruits may be waiting in the same place as all the other secrets of the world, behind the door of the lost century. And the truth the world has spent 800 years keeping shut. When you gather all of this together, the devil fruits begin to look like something far larger than a system of powers. They begin to look like a window into the deepest nature of the world itself. Consider everything we have traced tonight. The fruits are dreams made flesh, the crystallized form of human longing, every power the realized shape of a wish that someone once held. They carry a will of their own, a fragment of consciousness, a presence that can animate the dead and elude the powerful and merge with the living. They circulate endlessly through history, never created and never destroyed, the same dreams passing from heart to heart across the centuries, refusing to die. And they are hated by the sea, by nature itself, by the oldest and largest presence in the world, because they represent the audacity of reaching beyond the natural order, of taking a dream into the body and making it real. Put all of that together, and the fruits become a kind of statement about what the world is and what the people in it are. They say that human longing is a real force in the world, powerful enough to crystallize into physical form, powerful enough that the natural order itself pushes back against it. They say that dreams do not die, that what people wish for and reach for and refuse to let go of continues on long after the dreamers themselves are gone. They say that to want something badly enough, to dream it fully enough, is to create something that the world must reckon with, something that will outlast you and pass on to others and shape the course of history. The devil fruits are in the end a story about the power of wanting, about the strange reality of dreams, about the way that human desire reaches beyond the limits the world tries to place on it, and the sea's eternal hatred of them is the eternal tension at the heart of the whole story, the tension between the natural order that says you may only be what you were born to be, and the human dream that says you may become anything at all, no matter what the world or the sea has to say about it. There is a darker thread running through the whole history of the fruits, and no honest account of them can leave it out. Because the fruits grant such enormous power so easily in a single bite, they have always drawn the worst kind of desire toward them, and the history of the devil fruits is soaked in blood spilled for the sake of possessing one. People have murdered for fruits, betrayed their closest companions for fruits, spent entire lives consumed by the hunt for a particular power, certain that if they could only eat the right fruit, all their problems would be solved and all their enemies would fall. The fruits are a temptation as much as a gift, a shortcut that promises to lift a person above all their limits, and that promise has corrupted as many people as it has elevated. And here the deepest wisdom of the fruits returns one final time, because the story has shown again and again that the fruit does not make the person. A cruel and small person who gains a tremendous power becomes only a cruel and small person with a tremendous power, more dangerous but no greater, magnified but not improved. The fruit amplifies whatever is already there. It takes the dream a person already carries in their heart and gives it a body, and if that dream is a dream of domination or cruelty or revenge, then the fruit will serve that dream faithfully, and the person will become a monster with the power to match their monstrousness. The fruits are mirrors as much as weapons. They reveal what a person truly wants by giving them the power to pursue it without limit. And the long history of the fruits is full of people who reached for power believing it would make them whole, and found instead that it only made them more completely whatever they already were. The dream made flesh is only ever as good or as terrible as the heart that carries it, and the fruits, indifferent and patient, give themselves equally to saints and to monsters, and let the seas sort out the difference. And so we arrive, near the end of our long night together, at the questions that remain, the parts of the history of the devil fruits that are still unwritten, still hidden, still waiting in the dark to be revealed. For all that we have traced tonight, the deepest secrets of the fruits remain unanswered, and the longer you sit with them, the more you realize how much of the story of these powers is still to come. We still do not know where the devil fruits truly come from. The theory that they are dreams made flesh tells us what they are, but not how they come to be, not what process takes a human longing and crystallizes it into fruit, not where the first fruit came from, or how a new one forms when a user dies. We still do not fully understand the will inside them, the presence that animates a dead object and eludes the powerful and merges with an awakened user. Is it truly a fragment of consciousness, a piece of a dreamer sealed inside the dream? We still do not know the true ceiling of awakening, the full extent of what a fruit can become when a user pushes it to its limit, because every time the story shows us a new height, it hints that there are higher ones still. We still do not understand how a single person in all the world managed to wield two fruits at once and survive what kills everyone else, a violation of one of the most absolute laws of the world that the story has deliberately left unexplained. We do not even know for certain why the fruits are called what they are called. Why the word for devil attached itself to these powers, whether it is a reference to the curse, or to the sea's hatred, or to something darker buried in their forgotten origin. And underneath all of these sits the oldest question of all, the one the sea has been asking since the very first bite. Why does the ocean hate them? We have a theory, a beautiful one, that the sea rejects the fruits because they represent a defiance of the natural order, the audacity of reaching beyond what a creature was born to be. But a theory is not an answer, and the true mechanism, the real reason that water and sea stone can switch off the greatest powers in the world, remains hidden. The fruits in the sea are locked in an opposition as old as the world itself, and the full truth of that opposition has never been revealed. It may be that to understand it fully, we would have to understand the deepest nature of the world, the secret of the lost century, the truth that the ancients knew and the modern world forgot. The history of the devil fruits, in the end, is not yet finished. It is still being written, still unfolding, still keeping its deepest secrets, and the questions it leaves open are the same questions that the whole great story has been circling from the very beginning. The questions of what this world truly is, and where its powers come from, and what dream lies sleeping at the bottom of it all, waiting like a fruit on a branch for the right person to finally reach for it. If the history of the devil fruits is not yet finished, then it is worth pausing before we close on where that history seems to be heading, because the story has made it clear that the age of the fruits is entering a new chapter. For most of recorded history, the powers circulated quietly, passing from bearer to bearer, shaping wars and kingdoms, but following the same old rules they had always followed. And then, in the present age, things began to change. The most important fruit in the world, the one the rulers hunted for 800 years, finally found the person who could awaken it, and when it did. The awakening was described not as an ordinary event, but as the dawn of something new, the beginning of an age that had been promised long ago and waited for across centuries. The drums of an old liberation began to sound again. A power that had been sleeping for 800 years woke fully for the first time, and the world began slowly to shift around it. Alongside that great awakening, the story has revealed that more and more of the world's strongest fighters are crossing the threshold of awakening, reaching heights of devil fruit mastery that were once thought to belong only to legend. The ceiling of what the fruits can do is being pushed higher than it has ever been pushed before. Powers that seemed fully understood are revealing deeper layers. The frontier of the fruits, the edge of what these dreams made flesh are capable of, is expanding, and no one can yet see where it ends. It is as though the long, quiet history of the fruits is accelerating, as though the powers themselves are stirring, as though the dreams that have slept inside them for so long are beginning, all at once, to wake. What this means for the world, the story has only begun to show, but it suggests that the devil fruits are not a settled and finished part of the world, a stable system of powers that will simply continue as it always has. They are a living, changing force, entering a new and turbulent era, their deepest potential only now beginning to emerge. The age of the fruits is not over. In many ways, it may only be truly beginning, and the history we have traced tonight, the long centuries of powers circulating quietly through the world, may turn out to have been only the prologue, the slow, patient gathering of dreams that is now, at last, building toward something. The fruits have been waiting, the way they always wait. The way a fruit waits on a branch for the hand that will finally reach for it. And the sense the story gives us, as it moves toward its ending, is that the waiting is almost over, that the dreams are about to be claimed, and that the world is about to learn what these powers were truly for all along. It is worth pausing, too, on the name itself, and on how the world came to dread these powers even as it coveted them, because the history of the fruits is also a history of fear. The word the world uses for them carries the weight of the devil, of something cursed and unnatural and not quite of this world, and that word did not attach itself by accident to the ordinary people of the seas. A devil fruit has always been a thing of dread as much as desire. The powers they grant are wondrous, but they are also unnatural, defiances of the order that ordinary people live within, and the curse that comes with them, the rejection by the sea, has always seemed like proof that these fruits sit on the wrong side of some invisible line. Sailors who live their whole lives on the water and know the sea as a god to be respected have always regarded with unease anything the sea itself hates, and the sea hates nothing so consistently as it hates the fruits. For most of ordinary history, a person who encountered a devil fruit faced a genuine and frightening gamble. Without the rare knowledge contained in the encyclopedias, they could not know what power a fruit held, whether it was a world-shaking ability or a useless curiosity, and they could not undo the choice once it was made. To eat an unknown fruit was to surrender the sea forever in exchange for a mystery, to take a permanent and irreversible curse on the chance that the power inside might be worth it. Many who took that gamble regretted it, gaining some trivial or inconvenient ability and losing the ocean for the rest of their lives, marked forever as someone who had made a devil's bargain and lost. And even those who gained great powers carried the unease of having stepped outside the natural order, of having taken something into themselves that the sea and perhaps the world itself regarded as wrong. The fruits have always been wrapped in this double feeling, this mixture of longing and dread, the sense that to eat one is to grasp at something magnificent and forbidden at the same time. They are called the fruits of the devil for a reason, and the reason is not only the curse, it is the deep and ancient sense that a dream made flesh is a beautiful thing and a dangerous one, a wonder and a transgression, a gift that the natural world was never meant to give. And yet, for all that dread, what a breadth of wonder the fruits contain, what an astonishing range of dreams. This is the thing that strikes you most when you step back and survey the whole catalogue of the powers, the sheer imaginative wildness of them, the way they run from the world ending to the almost unbearably strange and small. There are fruits that let a person command the most fundamental forces of nature, gravity and weather and the elements themselves. And there are fruits whose powers are so peculiar, so specific, so unlike anything a person would think to wish for, that they seem to come from the far corners of the human imagination. There are powers over things that are not even physical, over emotions and memories, and the feelings that pass between people. There are powers that turn the world soft, or hollow, or weightless, powers that copy, and powers that erase, powers that make, and powers that unmake, powers that touch on love and fear, and time, and the soul itself. This is what the theory of dreams made flesh finally illuminates when you hold the whole catalogue of the fruits in your mind at once. They are so varied because human longing is so varied. People do not only wish for strength and power and the ability to destroy, they wish for stranger things, gentler things, more particular things. They wish to never be forgotten, or to make someone love them, or to undo a moment they regret, or to carry a piece of someone they have lost. They wish for the absurd, and the tender, and the impossible, and every one of those wishes in the world of One Piece has the potential to crystallize into a fruit, to take on a body, to wait somewhere in the world for the person who will make it real. The endless strangeness of the devil fruits is the endless strangeness of the human heart, the full unruly catalogue of everything people have ever longed for, gathered into fruit and scattered across the seas. And to wander through that catalogue, as we have tonight, is to wander through a kind of museum of human wanting, every fruit a wish, every power a dream, every strange and specific ability the crystallized form of some longing that a person, somewhere across the long history of the world, once held closely enough that it never let them go. There is one last way to understand the devil fruits before we let the night close over them, and it is perhaps the truest, because it places them inside the heart of the whole story they belong to. One Piece is, more than anything else, a story about freedom, about the open sea and the refusal of any cage, about people who set out across an endless ocean in pursuit of a dream that the world tells them is impossible, And the devil fruits, when you look at them in that light, are the perfect emblem of that story because they are dreams that refuse to stay impossible. They are the proof, woven into the very fabric of the world, that a longing held strongly enough can break past the limits the world tries to set on it, can take on a body, can become real. Every fruit is a small declaration that the boundary between what is wished for and what is possible is thinner than it looks, that the dreams people carry are not idle things, but forces with the power to reshape the world, and the curse that comes with them only deepens this meaning rather than undoing it. To take a dream into yourself, the fruits say, is to accept a cost, to give something up, to make a bargain that cannot be unmade. The sea turns against you. You can never go back to what you were. The freedom of the dream and the weight of its price come together in a single bite, inseparable, the way they always are for anyone who reaches for something larger than the life they were given. The people of this story who eat the fruits are choosing, in a small and permanent way, the same thing the whole story is about: the choice to chase a dream even knowing it will cost you, to reach for the impossible even knowing the sea will never forgive you for it, to become more than you were born to be, and to carry forever the price of having dared. The fruits are freedom and its cost, held in a single strange and beautiful object. And that is why they sit so perfectly at the center of a story about people who gave up everything safe and ordinary to sail toward a dream at the end of the world. So when you picture that fruit on its branch in the dark, waiting, you can picture it as more than a power waiting to be claimed. You can picture it as the whole spirit of the story distilled into a single quiet object. A dream that refused to die, a freedom that waits patiently for the one brave or foolish enough to reach for it, a promise that the impossible is closer than it looks, hanging there in the moonlight, swayed gently by the wind, ready for the hand that has not yet arrived. The history of the devil fruits is the history of that promise being kept, again and again, across all the long centuries of the world. Every fruit a dream made real, every bite a small act of daring, every power a piece of the same great refusal to accept the limits of the world that drives the whole story forward across the endless and beautiful sea. And so we come to the end of our long wandering through the history of the devil fruits, and it is worth gathering up gently. Everything we have walked through tonight, the way you might gather up the pieces of a long dream just before it fades. We began with the simplest thing, the strange swirled fruit and the terrible bargain of the first bite, the power that arrives and the curse that comes with it, the sea that turns forever against anyone who eats one. We followed that curse into the substance of sea stone, the ocean made solid and portable, the proof that the sea's hatred of the fruits is a real and physical law of the world. We walked through the three great families of power, the endlessly varied paramecia, the fierce and transforming zoan, the elemental and intangible logia, and we climbed past them into the hidden frontier of awakening, where a power spills out beyond the body to reshape the world itself. We sat with the strange rule of reincarnation, the law that makes the powers immortal even as their bearers die, the dreams circulating endlessly through history from heart to heart. We face the iron law that one body cannot hold two fruits, and the single mysterious figure who broke it and lived. We searched for where the fruits come from and found only silence. And then we found something deeper than an origin. The theory that the fruits are dreams made flesh, the crystallized form of human longing, and that the sea hates them because they are the audacity of reaching beyond the natural order. We watched what happened when people tried to copy that miracle in a laboratory, and we saw the horror of the manufactured fruits, the broken bodies, and the soldiers who could only laugh, the proof that a dream cannot be fully copied. We climbed to the rarest fruits of all, the mythical zoans, the gods and legends made real, and we followed that thread to the most important fruit in the world, the power of the sun god, the fruit the rulers feared and renamed and hunted for 800 years and never ever caught. We stood before the strongest powers in existence, the tremor that could crack the world, the darkness that could swallow other powers whole, the operation that could grant immortality at the cost of the giver's own life. And we followed the fruits down into the deepest places, into the will that seems to live inside them, into the human grief and inheritance they carry, into their tangled roots in the lost century and the forbidden history of the world, into the questions that remain unanswered, and the new age that seems to be dawning. The whole long history of the fruits, from the first bite to the final mystery, is really a single story told 1,000 different ways. The story of dreams that refuse to die, of human longing made real and passed from hand to hand across the centuries, of the endless quiet contest between the natural order that says you may only be what you were born to be and the stubborn human dream that says you may become anything at all. So let that be the thought you carry down with you toward sleep tonight, the gentlest version of everything we have wandered through. Somewhere out in that vast world of endless ocean, on some quiet island no one has mapped, on a branch in the dark where no one is looking, there is a fruit. It looks ordinary. It hangs there in the night the way any fruit hangs, swayed a little by the wind, touched by the moonlight, waiting, and inside it sleeps a dream, a power, a whole crystallized longing that someone, long ago, once held in their heart, a wish so strong that it took on a body and refused to die. It has been waiting there, or in some other fruit before it, for a very long time. It is in no hurry. It will go on waiting, patiently, through the night and through the years, until the day a hand finally reaches up and takes it down. There is something quiet and comforting in that image when you let yourself rest inside it. The idea that dreams do not simply vanish. The idea that the things people longed for and reached for and refused to give up are not lost when the people themselves are gone, but go on, somewhere, circulating through the world, waiting to be picked up again. In the story, this is a literal law, the rule that keeps the powers immortal. But it is also, in the way of the best stories, a quiet truth about something larger, about the way that what we care about can outlast us, about the way that a dream handed down can be carried on by someone we will never meet, about the way that nothing we truly longed for is ever completely wasted. Because longing itself, in this world, is a kind of seed, and seeds have a way of waiting in the dark until their season comes. You carry dreams too, the ones you brought with you into this night, the ones that are still here even as your thoughts grow slow and soft and ready for sleep. You do not have to do anything with them right now. You do not have to chase them or solve them or even hold on to them tonight. Like the fruit on the branch, they are in no hurry. They will keep. They will be there in the morning, waiting, the way they have waited before, the way the dreams of a whole world wait inside their fruit for the hand that will finally reach for them. For now, you can set them down. You can let them rest beside you in the dark, patient and unhurried, while you let yourself drift toward the quiet that is already gathering at the edges of your thoughts. Out in the world of the story, the long history of the fruits goes on, even now, even as you sleep. Somewhere a power is passing from one bearer to the next, an old dream reincarnating into a new fruit on a far off tree. Somewhere a fighter is pushing a fruit toward an awakening no one has seen before. Somewhere the most important fruit in the world is laughing its way through a new age that has only just begun. And somewhere, always, the sea is moving, vast and ancient and patient, holding its old quiet grudge against the dreams that dared to take on flesh, rocking the ships and the islands and the sleeping world gently on its endless dark water. The whole great machinery of the story keeps turning, the powers circulating, the dreams passing on, the questions waiting to be answered, all of it continuing softly in the background while you let go of the day and sink toward rest. There is no rush now, and nothing left to understand. The whole long history is behind us, the powers and the curses, the dreams made flesh, and the sea that never forgives them, and you can let all of it grow quiet. The fruits will keep their secrets a little longer. The questions we could not answer will still be there whenever you wish to return to them, patient as ever, waiting in the dark the way they have always waited. You do not have to hold any of it now. You can let the whole world of the story soften and blur at its edges. Let the islands and the oceans and the swirled fruit on its branch fade gently into the warm dark behind your eyes, and let yourself drift the rest of the way down into sleep. Thank you for drifting through the history of the devil fruits with me tonight. If you found some rest here, somewhere in the quiet between the powers and the questions, then the night has done what it was meant to do. There is another calm story waiting just to the left whenever you are ready for it, ready to carry you a little deeper into the dark and a little further toward sleep. There is always another fruit on another branch, always another dream waiting to be reached for, always another layer beneath the one you just understood, because in this story there is never quite a final answer, only one more quiet mystery waiting patiently in the dark for whoever is willing to keep wandering toward it. And that, perhaps, is the gentlest thing the devil fruits have to teach, that the wondering never has to end, that there is always more waiting out there in the vast and quiet world, and that you can let tomorrow do the wondering, because tonight all you have to do is rest. For now, let all of it go. Let the fruits and the powers and the long history sink back down beneath the surface where they live, settling slowly into the dark like dreams returning to the place that dreams come from. Let the sea grow calm. Let the questions rest. And let yourself rest with them, somewhere out on the quiet water, carried gently on a current that has been moving since long before you were born and will keep moving long after you have drifted off, while the story goes on being told and the dreams go on waiting patiently for a morning that is still a long and gentle way off.